My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them. So I got my friend back there I was hitting the weights this morning with. I told him the story. He said, I lost my mom when I was 19. It's that type of story that if you share who you are, that's the connection, your authenticity. So how are we paying attention to what we desire? Well, that's why when we talk about clarity, why clarity is so important, that you know who you are, you know how you want to measure your interactions, and you know how you're going to measure success. Without that, you guys are toast. You need that clarity.
Hello, I'm Kate McKay, and welcome back to Master Your Life. I'm so excited about this interview today. I've been waiting for this one. And welcome Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer L. White to the show.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
So glad to have you here. This is something I've been waiting for. We had to reschedule it, and now we're ready to hit it up. A little bit about you. I'm just going to read a little bit so the audience knows who you are. So Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer L. White is currently serving on active duty at Fort Bliss. She's enlisted at the age of 18 as a heavy-wheeled vehicle mechanic and commissioned 5 years later as an aviator, blackhawk pilot. This I did not know. Oh, my heavens. She has served for more than 25 years, has a degree in biology and business, and is currently married to Major Tyler White, an infantry officer. She's also the Fort Bliss Chapter Director of the Female Mentoring and Morale Program, helping military women achieve their full potential. I just read this and get goosebumps.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you and I have talked so many times before, but as you stated, like we have so many similar passions just about helping other people. And for the past 3 years with this chapter, this female mentoring morale program, it really has just become a big part of my life and such a true passion for me.
And so how did the origin of this come about? The chapter on female mentoring and morale program. What was the origin of that?
So it originally started, the founder of the overall program, because it's growing Army-wide, is Colonel Clydea Pritchard Brown, and she is simply amazing. And so I want to link you two up together as well, because her energy is off the charts. She saw a need for something like this as a senior ranking female, and so she pitched it. She started the very first chapter in 2019 at Fort Lee, and then the chapter started to grow, and there are more than, I think, 40. I think we're about 42 chapters total in the Army right now. And our Fort Bliss chapter was the 12th chapter to establish. And right now we're the most successful chapter because we put so much energy into it. We recruit so many women and men to support and facilitate the program to just continue to help others grow and, again, achieve their full potential, because that's what's most important.
Yeah, it's like you're just speaking my language. I literally, when I listen to you, I'm like, my mouth is gaping open because I share that same passion and commitment, and maybe mine comes from a different end, but I think the soul of what we are saying and the mission to which we are both driven is similar. And I would love it if you would just give me a little background. Who did you want to be when you grew up?
So it's really funny because who I wanted to be when I was little is a bit different than who I am now. My mom was a critical care nurse, and so she was my hero, or my shero, so to speak, growing up, and I wanted to be just like her. And so I remember, and I was only like 5 or 6 at the time, telling my mom, I want to be just like you when I grow up. I want to be a nurse. And she told me, she said, Jennifer, if you want to go into the medical field, that's great. I support you, but I want you to be a doctor, not a nurse. So you don't have to deal with what I have to deal with. And so it's funny because I was so young that I remember that conversation. I remember sitting on the couch in the living room of the house at the time, and it stuck with me. So at that age, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a doctor. And my whole life as growing up was geared towards that, so I put a lot of work into school all through high school and college. And that's how I actually joined the military, is because my high school counselor knew I wanted to be a doctor. And I was on that track, and she asked me if I knew about North Georgia College, which was one of the senior military colleges because I am from Georgia. And I said, no. And she said, well, you just have to apply for this military scholarship, and then it'll pay for all of your undergrad degree. And the school has the highest acceptance rate into medical school. It had a 98% acceptance rate at the time. And so I was like, done, sign me up. I don't come from a military family. And I knew nothing about it. I didn't really understand what a military school was. I went to visit it, and I was just ready to go. I found a recruiter on my own. I went and did all the interviews on my own. I had to get a state representative to do a letter of recommendation. So I met with him all by myself at about 17 years old. And a few months later, I accepted the scholarship, and I enlisted 2 days before my 18th birthday.
It's
And
incredible.
all going through college, I was on track. I was biology pre-med. And then because it was actually a National Guard scholarship, so I'd started my career in the Georgia Army National Guard, I had to go ahead and pick a branch, something to be while I was attending follow-on med school. And so I went to a unit, an aviation unit, because I wanted to see what flight surgeons did. Well, ironically, the flight surgeon, by the time my paperwork finished, had retired. And so I was just hanging out with a bunch of aviators at the time. And they asked me, like, hey, do you want to go to flight school? And I'm like, that sounds like fun. And so I didn't know you could study for the aptitude test. So I just went into school the next week, took the test, passed it, passed the flight physical, and I branched aviation with the intent of still going to medical school. But as I finished flight school, I loved doing it so much, I just never looked back, and I never did the follow on to med school. And honestly, I have no regrets, because this was clearly where I was supposed to be.
Right, your passion just drove you through. The through line I hear is the yes, that you were like, okay, just
Yeah.
to opportunity. And I really love that it's almost like your mother instilled this belief in you, and that you like when you describe that, the moment of you sitting on the couch and then just going, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm going to go all out. And why do you think that that's so important for people to have that sense of belief?
Because we get in our own way a lot more than other people or other things get in our way. And it's a mentality. And my mom was really great about, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you're willing to work for it. You don't have to be the smartest, you don't have to be the strongest, but you can learn and you can train. And so it is 100% due to her that I never felt like I had limits. She always said yes. She always supported any sport I wanted to play or try, any musical instrument I wanted to play or try. And if I didn't like it, she didn't force me to do it. She just made me see it through for that season. And because of that, I never stopped doing anything. I just added more and more things that I was doing because it was fun. There wasn't pressure. And I just never knew or never thought that I had limits because of how she raised me.
Well, how was it then for you? Because clearly you were well loved, but how was it for you growing up as a woman with that kind of I can do it attitude, particularly with other women?
Well, so it's kind of funny because coming from the South, very stereotypical, women are supposed to be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more reserved, sitting pretty in the corner, raising the children. And that's clearly not how I was raised. My mom, again, was a working mom and was a single mom for a while before she remarried my stepdad, who helped raise me. And really, in addition to her telling me what I could do, I watched her do everything. She was literally the most intelligent, brilliant person I've ever known. And her charisma, like, she just processed information. She was good at everything she did, and nothing stopped her. When we had moments of hardship in our family, because trust me, I was loved deeply, but we had some hard moments, she persevered and she fought for whatever she needed to protect her children and to get through it. And so just seeing her never fail, in my eyes, let me know that as long as you keep trying, it's going to work out.
I simply can't imagine what that would be like to have someone that powerful of a role model. And I guess the question is, how did you evolve to become your own sense of self based on that belief? Because a lot of times people will have a really powerful parent, and it's very difficult for that child to be in the shadow of that parent. And it sounds like that wasn't a challenge for you.
No, not at all. And I don't hate to say it. I love saying it. that I keep attributing everything to my mom, and maybe it's because I was the second child, so she already had a little bit of practice with my sister who's 5 years older. But she, again, never put limits on me. She let me be who I wanted to be in the moment. So in high school, I went through all of the phases. I went through the preppy girl phase. I went through my band nerd phase. I went through my skater girl phase. I went through my hippie phase. And, I wanted to change my attire. I wanted to change my hair. And she never limited me. She let me do it. And she would say things to me like, well, I don't personally like that style, but if that's what you want right now, as long as you keep up your grades and keep helping with the chores, because I grew up on a farm, so we had to tend to the horses and the cows. So that's the very country side of me as well. As long as I was a good kid, she let me be who I wanted to be in that moment and encouraged it, because she knew it was just a phase, and that it would help me figure out faster who I really was. And I'm so thankful, because I had to carry that into my military career, because there were times, just like I'm sure you've had times, where you're questioning yourself, who am I? Who do I want to be? Is who I want to be, who I currently am projecting and on track to be, because you do question yourself. We all do. Women are great at questioning ourselves and if we're doing the right thing. But what I also learned over the years is men are great at questioning themselves as well. They just don't verbalize it the way we do.
100%. So how was it for you then, being that strong as a woman once you entered school? Because for me, it was like my mother I always felt like that I was the greatest thing since cake and ice cream. Like, I'm one of 9 kids. And so I'm number 6 and 9. I knew I was the youngest girl. So I knew my role in the family was to make my mom laugh and bring her happiness. And I was a little silly, but she thought I was awesome. But then going into school, I didn't feel like people thought I was so awesome. Right. And so it took an adjustment for me, but it sounds like you were able to integrate that well. Was there tension in being such a focused woman in, say, middle school or high school?
So I wouldn't say, maybe 1 year of elementary school, because my mom got divorced when I was 7 from my biological father. And so we moved in with my grandparents, and then they did school district changes. And so over those years, I was in 3 different schools between 3rd grade and 5th grade. And so 3rd grade was great, just like all my other schools had been. But 4th grade, when those districts changed, I did not enjoy that one. And that sticks out so much, because it was more of a fancy town, where the schools were. And my mom was just a nurse. Whereas other people's parents were doctors and lawyers and like high level executives, and they weren't living with their grandparents. And that was hard for me, because people are like, oh, your mom's just a nurse. And I thought my mom was great, and I still do. And how can you think so, or look down on someone for just being a nurse? Like, she's really incredible. And what's funny is my mom always had these stories of where she had problems with the doctors, and she was more experienced than the doctors. It doesn't mean the doctors weren't smart, but they wouldn't listen to her when she's like, no, this is what's wrong with the patient. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to kill them. Because she was a critical care nurse. So every second mattered. And she was the best her entire 45-year career at saving lives and comforting the family members of those whose lives simply could not be saved. And she helped plenty of doctors see the error in their ways, because they were young and they were arrogant and they weren't going to listen to her, whether it was a woman or just because she was a nurse. And so that year of 4th grade, I really struggled. And it was the first time where I had to ask to be tested for the gifted program, because we started gifted programs in elementary school. And I just didn't feel welcomed or liked. And it seemed to be looked down upon that I asked to be tested. And I said, hey, I was on track in this other school, which is just right down the road. I don't understand. And I struggled that year. But then the following year, when she remarried, I went to a whole new school in a whole different county, and I got on track again. And all through middle school and high school, my my desire to just be better was influenced by my teachers. Like, they enjoyed it. You know what I mean? And it honestly happened all throughout high school. I was supported, and I was actually giving more responsibility than I thought that I should be getting. And it wasn't until after college that I started having those experiences where my personality and my desire to achieve made things more difficult for me.
Can you describe a time where that was a challenge for you? And
Oh,
maybe what was the lesson from that? Because I think we all have those pivotal times where it could have been like a failure, or it could have been just something to totally taking you off guard. That was your teacher.
yeah. So because I felt so empowered, and I didn't realize it at the time, because I had just, again, always been supported all through college. I was given a bunch of different leadership positions that I didn't ask for at that military school. And then so when then I commissioned and I finished flight school and I went to my unit, my personality at that point was atypical, which you would think in the aviation community, very type A, overachievers. Well, that's just not the case, right? If it's a little bit of everyone. And so I came in there gung ho, ready to go. And I was the youngest lieutenant at the time. And everybody was like, you need to pump your brakes. We don't really push that hard here. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't understand anything different. And so, because you're young and you rely instinctually on what you've always done that's made you successful, even though I heard what they were saying, it didn't process in the moment. And so I'm like, well, no, these are the standards. This is how we can go. We can push more to go here. It took me years. And fortunately, I had plenty of mentors, all men at the time, mostly the warrant officers that I flew with, really coached me on understanding people, understanding the environment, and how to temper delivery and approach without changing who you are. And
Wow.
it was hard and it took years. But
So what
eventually,
would you say, if you could you give a couple examples of that?
yes. So in the aviation community, becoming a pilot in command, that means you are the aircraft commander, is very important. It's a big part of your career progression. And so for me, everything is, what do I need to do to get to the next step? Because I don't ever want to be stagnant. That's a personality trait that, again, clearly my mother instilled in me, like, keep going. But when it comes to a version of politics, you kind of have to wait your turn and for someone to nominate you. But I didn't know that. So I was like, okay. So I became a very proficient pilot. I felt like I was doing well. My instructor pilots were telling me I was doing well, but it wasn't the instructors that made these decisions for you to get the evaluation to become a pilot in command. It was the commanders, the commissioned officers like me. And I had not put in time to invest in those relationships because I relied on those natural relationships I was developing with the warrant officers, because those are who I flew with. And so I just didn't have the most positive relationship when I went and said, hey, I'm ready to go and get my evaluation to become a pilot in command. And they viewed me as arrogant. Again, for asking for it. And I'm like, I don't understand. It's the logical next step. That's what you tell us is the logical next step. I just want to know the standards, and either I meet the standards or I don't. But it was off-putting to them. But again, the peers and the immediate leaders that I had, they weren't hyper type A. And I didn't understand politics of units, because there are politics everywhere. Work environment politics are just a reality. And so I would get frustrated. And for me, when I got frustrated, I pushed harder because I'm not used to failing or not achieving something. And so I had to just really do some self-assessment and really think about how I want to approach things, while also understanding the leadership environment, and that sometimes it is the environment that's going to limit you.
Wow, that's so powerful. So what would you say would be a word of wisdom? Because I think we're talking about the military here, but that goes for any kind of professional experience where you're a strong man or woman that has a success principled mindset, and and understanding, I guess, that we also have to measure success by the quality of the relationships. Yeah.
100%.
Mm.
It's wild. And when I say it took me years to understand, when I look back on it, I think it's because I had exponentially more number of years of being told, yep, go for the next step, go for the next step, go for the next step. This is what you do for the next step. And then to be told, slow down, within just 2 or 3 years, being told to slow down over and over again. Like, the ratio of what you're told in terms of years is significantly different. And so it takes a long time. And when you're in your early 20s, the maturity is just not there. And if you don't have coaches and mentors to really explain it to you on that real personal level, and you're just feeling like you're hitting that stop sign, you don't know what to do. So then you just try anything and everything, and you rely on your instincts. But I finally started finding people who were more like-minded than me and more mature than me, and asked them, how did you navigate this? Get through it. And so I sought out other people who seemed more like me, who were, again, an anomaly in that current community, and they kind of showed me the ropes. But unfortunately, also, it did take a change in leadership before I was fully embraced and allowed to take my evaluation and then become the first female pilot in command for my unit.
So amazing. Well, I love this. It's as though when we are first starting and we're in that the initial apprentice stage of mastery, and I talk about this in my new book, Agility Mindset, that we're pushing through the beginning stages, right? We're seeking mastery, and so we're using psychological fortitude. We're understanding that we have to be sort of adaptable, that we have that, eyes wide open, we're strategically aware of where we are. But then we get to a certain point in a success journey where it's not just us, and we have to realize there's a new landscape, and that we have to take a different operational approach to how we lead success. And this happened to you in your marriage as well. Do you mind sharing a story about how you showed up there too? Because you've actually been able to navigate this in a really powerful way.
And when it comes to my marriage, I give so much credit to my husband, because even though we both have strong personalities, mine is more verbal and more energetic, whereas he is most people probably call him that stereotypical strong silent type. And he's an infantry officer. Even though I swore up and down I would never date or marry military. And if I did, it certainly wouldn't be infantry. And then, of course, God laughs and says, well, watch this. And so I met my husband in, 2013. And he was just easygoing. And I did not have to change or present who I was differently. He liked my fiery side. He loved the fact that I was an aviator. He wasn't intimidated by it, which, unfortunately, when I was trying to date, a lot of men were. And I got to where I wouldn't even tell men what I did, because the conversation would change and there wouldn't be a second date. And then so before I met him, I changed my mindset and said, why would I have to cover up who I am to be in a relationship? Because that won't be a healthy relationship. And so it was really funny because, again, I didn't get married until I was 34, so a little bit older, used to being strong, independent, can do everything on my own, because I didn't have a counterpart on the personal side of the house. And so I remember it was something really easy. It was something on the top shelf, because my husband's 6 foot, 6'1" and I'm 5'2". I was climbing the counters. I was going to get it. He goes, babe, do you want me to help you? I'm like, no, I got it, because I was used to doing it. And he said, I know you do, but I am here to help you. So let me help you. And in that moment, I got chills, because no one had ever said that to me before, because I'd always done it on my own, and it wasn't that I didn't have friends who helped me, because I did. And I would call on them in a heartbeat, but I had not been in a healthy relationship with a man who was comfortable with my strength, but also understood, whether consciously or unconsciously, that I also had a need to be a woman, to be feminine in his presence. And that was the first time I felt like I could truly just be a girl in a relationship. And I didn't have to be the leader. I had someone who could help lead me, just help me. And it wasn't a power struggle, because I want to be the girl 100%.
Exactly.
You know?
Isn't that the best?
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I love that story, because it really does model the power of and the dynamic between men and women, particularly during this time where you and I have really dug into this. Clearly, I'm passionate about working with men and men's mental health because of my experience with the loss of my son and my brother. And I see the suicide rates 1 to 4 men to women. That's tragic for me. And I know the military has a very high suicide rate of people as well. And so I'm clearly deeply committed to having these types of conversations with powerful men and women who can come together to acknowledge the difference between us, but also create a greater bond in what bridges us together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about in our mentorship group is, even though it's a female mentoring and morale program, it has the word female in it because we're just the minority gender. But we need male participation. We crave and want male participation because we have to be better for men, just like we want men to be better for us, so that we can better not only coexist, but support one another, because it takes both to grow and develop and to be an amazing team.
So what's in the way of this? When you look at just a bird's eye view, like from an aviator lens, from your blackhawk, when you're looking down, where are the problems? Where are the problems?
It's the stigma of the word female.
Mm.
And also, that's just for the program specifically. And again, this is something unique to me. It took me a long time to realize that how fortunate I was to have the number of deliberate mentors in my career that I've had over the past 25 years.
Mm.
All of them men until 2017. 2017 was the first time I met someone, a female who happened to be an aviator, who put in deliberate effort to mentor me. Because at the moment, I didn't think that I needed a specific female mentor, so I never sought one out. And I felt so fortunate at that time because she also helped me realize not everybody has as many mentors as I've had. And so, because I was used to deliberate mentorship for men who happened to be leaders who saw something in me, and there was no quid pro quo, it was genuine. They saw what I had to offer and wanted to help me grow. It's not like that across the board and for everyone. There are some men out there who think that there is a stigma, or that they'll be looked at if they try to deliberately mentor a female soldier, because there'll be, chatter about, oh, well, he's just interested. But also, women are less likely to seek out the mentorship because they want to do it on their own. They don't want to be looked at as needy, even though a guy can seek out mentorship and not feel the same way. Or a senior male will take a junior male to lunch to mentor him, and there's no chatter about them potentially being in an unprofessional relationship. And so it's little things like that that prevent those natural relationships to come to fruition. And that's why we really need like a deliberate program that focuses on deliberate mentorship and getting past those biases that are just out there.
I love that you use the word deliberate, right? Because it's creating a structure around how to have healthy mentor relationships with people of the opposite sex, so that we can gain value from each other and provide value to each other to grow. And we need it. We need it in the military. We need it in marriages. We need it in corporations. We need it in our churches. This conversation is key. It's so key. So where are the challenges? Ego, fear, where are we stuck?
I think it's both. I think you hit the nail on the head. Ego in a couple of different arenas. More so, the female ego is, I can do it. I don't need help. I don't need a mentor. I've heard women say it to me. I've heard women say, I don't want to seek out that mentorship, role or relationship, because I don't want to be seen as this. I am strong. I am capable. And we're all strong and capable. We just have to tap into it. But no one can do anything alone. Like, you just can't. And then the fear is both sides, men and women. The fear of being viewed in a certain way, whether it's true or not. And so it comes with that security. And what I have noticed is the mentorship relationships between the genders occur best when both members are comfortable in who they are. And also, most of the time, people are married, especially the senior ones, and having a healthy relationship at home. Right. And that gives them confidence that they're not going to be viewed, because people know that they're married or in a serious relationship. They know this is a successful, strong relationship where they trust, respect, and value each other. Therefore, there's no way anybody could see a mentor-mentee relationship as something other than what it is.
That's really powerful. And so basically that's when you talk about deliberate, it's like, how do we create the vessel to which these conversations can happen and where these qualities can be fostered? And I am all about that. That is incredible. So we'll talk a little bit about what you have currently going on in your Fort Bliss chapter and how people can perhaps model your success in their lives.
Well, first is just don't give up on anything that you do. I'm a firm believer that I need to fail at something to a certain degree about 3 times before I have it mostly figured out. And that doesn't mean after the 3rd time I have it all figured out. I just have it mostly figured out. And I was actually just coaching a young officer literally 3 days ago on this, because she's trying to start a unit chapter in her brigade. And she's been working at this for over a year. And she's like, ma'am, how do you keep doing it? I said, honey, let me go ahead and tell you. I have failed at this, trying different things about 4 different times over the past 3 years, but we didn't stop. We tried different things to see what worked, to see what people were interested in, to see what we were comfortable in delivering our target audience. And then we adjusted. And if it didn't work, it's not a big deal. No one died over it. So what? That professional development session wasn't the best topic. Pick a different one next time. You know what I mean? Or pick a different speaker. Or we realized that when we were hosting only educational sessions, we call them LPDs, leader professional development sessions, that wasn't what everybody wanted. So we expanded. Now we have socials, which are partially for networking, so people can develop those natural relationships in a less stressful setting. But also it's part of decompression. If you go out with a group of people and you have some dinner or a cocktail or go do an event, you're relieving that stress that you get from work, while also building some friendships and some mentor relationships.
Right.
And so start with that, and then also we have, because I'm also passionate about volunteering, if you have the time, for the more introverted people, because believe it or not, I am a high introvert. So exactly.
We're even the same height, dude. I'm 5'2" too.
Yeah, I love it. And so go walk the dogs, you know what I mean? Because now you're interacting with your community. And so just try different things until you see what works. And that's also the approach I take in my personal life. I don't like to tell everybody this. My husband is my second husband. You know what I mean? It didn't work the first time. I didn't make the best decisions in choosing. I also didn't make some of the best decisions while being married in terms of accepting what was presented in front of me. But I didn't give up. I didn't say, oh, I'm never getting married again because it didn't work out. I moved on. I got past it. I learned from it. And I'm just going to keep going because, again, we only stop ourselves.
That's very true. So I would love to actually create a whole series of conversations around this topic because I think it's so important. And I think that there is a process that you're working on and that I am working on that we could put together to be able to model a system that it can be applied in a larger forum. I really do believe that. And I'm deeply committed to you in your growth. And I feel that same way from you, that we met, interestingly enough, just by maybe a book that I wrote or whatever. We've never met in person. And yet from the start, our first conversation, we were joining arms and forces together to lead the charge on something that we both feel so deeply passionate about. I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing. I'm looking forward to supporting you as you bring what you are doing in the military out into the bigger forum, this podcast being one of them, that people need to know who you are. And what would be the best way for people to find out more about you and your programs?
Right now, Facebook, just because we can upload our videos there, but we also have an Instagram account. And so if people just search Fort Bliss FMMP or Fort Bliss Female Mentoring and Morale Program, it's linked to my personal Facebook page, and Instagram accounts. And so you can see more about the program, and then of course more about me. And folks are always welcome to reach out to me directly, because I love engaging with others. Just like what you said, we instantly clicked and have had a phenomenal relationship for probably about 6 months now.
Right. It's so cool. Yes. And I'll be sharing that information in the show notes. But I would just like to ask you one final question. If you were to have, if you were able to, I'm going to ask you it this way. If you were able to write something in the sky, usually I say billboard, but you were able to write something in the sky that you wanted people to know, everybody to know, what would you write?
Keep going. Find a way to get over, around, or under the hurdle. Just keep going.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer L. White. I appreciate this conversation. I look forward to having more as we move into our amazing future together. So thank you.
Thank you so much.